we're going live. It takes 1 second, but it's going. I'm going to record it just in case so that we don't lose any of it. Just sometimes the interactions don't work so well. Okay, I am letting everyone in, and then
tell me when we're ready to begin.
I'm letting people in now.
Woohoo! Wow, so many beautiful people.
After 4, so I guess you can start. Well, she tells us that everybody's in. Maybe she has no. You're not muted. No.
Welcome, everybody. We'll get started in a minute.
I saw.
You can start, Arthur.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's exciting for us to be back on the road. As many of you know, I saw faces and names as you all were signing on. We did this when we went to Hope in Maine a few months ago with Guy Hanukkah, and everybody seemed to enjoy that. It was very successful, and we were racking our brains. What could we do? Could we possibly top that? And Ruby said to us one day, I have an idea. She said, do you know who Boris Bally is? And I said, Boris Bally? No, is he a rock star? I don't recognize that name. I was convinced it was made up, you know. And she said, no. She said, we have somebody in town who's a wonderful sculptor. I said, I don't know how I could have missed him. And she said, and as a matter of fact, the plus is, believe it or not, he's a member of the temple. So we decided to seek him out. And I can't tell you what a wonderful time Peter and I had when we met with him to find out about everything that you're seeing behind you. I just want to do a brief introduction and a little background so he doesn't have to do that. We can hear about all the things that he does.
I just wanted to do a couple of housekeeping rules just to make it easier for everyone to ask questions. Please stay muted during the presentation. And if you have a question that comes up, just please put it in the chat box. We'll read it at the end of the presentation. And that way everybody's questions will be heard at the end.
Hopefully we'll have a lot of questions and we'll get a lot of answers from the expert. Boris was born in Switzerland. He's a trained artist and he is a refugee who came to the country. And I didn't ask him, did he end up in Rhode Island because we were the old jewelry capital of the country. And we walked into the studio and I was blown away because it gave me a rush back to the old days when I worked with the jewelry industry. He's eccentric, he's humorous, he's really terrific, a really wonderful crafted person who I think could probably do anything that he decides, I want to try this or not. He's a sculptor. And the other really interesting thing is he's a political activist and he's working to end gun violence. And he'll tell us all about that, even updating us to his experiences last night via Zoom at the hearings at the State House. He has beautiful, beautiful things and going from A to B to Z and D, and with wonderful pieces and different museums around the country and maybe around the world. I'm not sure if you did say that there were things outside of the country, Boris. Plus the fact he does these amazing pieces that go on the outside of buildings. That's all I'm going to say about that, because we have to have Boris tell you the rest. You see us sitting comfortably in our living room right now, but we're actually taking you out because we're not there. Just hold on 1 second. Here we are. Here we are on Atwells Avenue on the corner of Academy Avenue with a building. You can't see too much of it from here, but before we walk inside or afterwards, we'll show you the building on the outside. Boris will tell you how he managed to scoop up this magnificent building that he has turned into this wonderful creative workshop. And without further ado, I think I've said enough. Boris, we're going to come into the studio and watch you work your wonders.
Well, thank you, Arthur. Thank you, Peter. And thank you, Ruby and Judy. This is such an honor for me. Thank you all for joining me. I dedicate today's lecture to the love of my life, Lynn Taylor, who's also joining us, who I wouldn't be sitting here without. So, and as a matter of fact, I wouldn't be in Providence without. To correct the record of what Arthur was saying, I was actually born in Chicago. So it was my parents came to this country right before I was born, both Swiss immigrants from Zurich, but Swiss was my first language. And then the way that Lynn and I met was actually swimming laps in a pool when she was I think she was in her second year of medical school, and I was teaching at Carnegie Mellon, teaching a foundation course, and we just happened to, it was like lightning and thunderbolts when we met, and she taught me the word beschert, and she's the love of my life, and here she is listening to me, so I'm sweating, so got to impress her. But I'm gonna I'd like to talk about why I'm sitting here and the work that I do and kind of the process of when it began and how I ended up here. And I'd like to do that going through various steps and do it through a PowerPoint presentation. If you look behind me now, that's my studio. I have a removable camera that I can move around to different stations. And if there's time, I'd like to show you the different parts of the studio and possibly some demonstrations, maybe some bending and some cutting, some interesting things around the studio, if that's okay. But I'm going to try to share my screen with you and do my little presentation. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Oh, good. So that's showing up. Yay. So among the things that I'm blessed with, I'm the most fortunate guy in the world. I met Lynn, I moved to Providence. We loved Providence. Unfortunately, I moved 50,000 pounds of my studio to Providence, and 4 months after I moved to Pawtucket, I got kicked out of my rental. And as good luck would have it, I was interviewing at Rhode Island College and happened to be in this neighborhood and drove by this building with a for sale sign on it. And if you look at the left photo there, that's my building. That's when I first saw it. They wanted $40,000 for it. So I scooped it up for 30 and I rehabilitated it. And poor Lynn had to deal with it while she was doing her residency. And she was a real trooper about it because she's stepping over, paint and nails, and we had workers in here. I did a lot of the rehab myself. And let's see, how does this move forward? Now I've got to, why won't it advance? There we go. I have to advance there. So welcome to my catastrophe edition. This is a little bug that we all have grown to love. So my parents, as I mentioned before, came from Zurich, Switzerland. They came here. My dad came here to study at the Illinois Institute of Technology and later the Southern Illinois University to study with Buckminster Fuller. And he ended up being one of his assistants. So my dad ended up in the field of industrial design. And my mom, if you look at Lynn's background behind her, she's listening in, you'll see my mom's tapestry. My mom is an artist and a tapestry weaver. She's doing totem poles right now. And it's kind of the wackier one. So I am sort of the hybrid of both my parents' logical designy self and my my mom, the wild artist, anything goes part. But I'm also a hybrid of, Swiss culture and growing up in America. I'm American, and now thanks to Lynn, I'm also a hybrid of Jewish. And our kids are raised Jewish, and we're very proud of that culture and that heritage. So this was my magic moment. When I was 14, I actually have here somewhere. Where did I put that? I was a bit of a troublemaker, and I don't know if can you guys see my screen too? Still? But I have a skateboard. This is what I used to make when I was young. Skateboards. Had a business where I would make skateboards and sell them to my friends. And my mom, to keep me out of trouble, suggested that I take a course at the Pittsburgh Center for the Arts with this man, Steve Korpa, who, as you can tell, is a beautiful nut. And he's the guy that lit the fire under me at the age of 14 to learn how to make jewelry. And that love has not gone away, the love of metal and the challenge that it poses. This was the first jewelry I ever made. So here I am, 14, maybe already 15. Everybody thought I was a girl, which is fine. And this is my first commission ever. One of our neighbors had me set a sand dollar. And I'm just showing this to kind of show where I came from, so many decades ago. So the next step was learning. I was hooked to the metal craft. And the next step is, of course, learning a good foundation, just like with any field. And so I had to learn technique, and I had to learn how to make a living. So as good fortune would have it, my parents helped me score an apprenticeship in Switzerland, in Basel, where I was immersed for a year. Now, this guy, Alexander Schaffner, I pretty much owe everything to for my skills, for my craft. He was a goldsmith, pretty well known in Basel, and he was writing a book on the apprenticeship system, and I had the good fortune of being his guinea pig for learning all these skills. And usually what takes 4 years took me a year. So I was really fortunate with that. He passed away about 5 years ago now. And there's actually a piece at the Museum of Art and Design that I dedicated to him. This is the book that he was writing. These are all my samples down below that I had to learn how to do, which eventually led to setting diamonds and rubies and working with gold and platinum. And the reason why I wanted to show that is there is a breadth of the skills that I have here that led me to, the current work with street signs. So a big part of the career part is proving it. So once you have the foundation, what are you going to do with it? And a big part of it is to explore, process, and create your own vocabulary and become an artist. Challenge yourself to find yourself through your medium. One of the ways that I think was really effective, I learned this from Carol Kamada, who was my teacher at Carnegie Mellon, was that I decided that every year I would approach a various genre, be it flatware or hollowware or wearable art. And each year I would learn something from that and then revisit each of those areas. And of course, one of those areas was also teaching. So I tried to keep that alive. And so hopefully, kind of develop my sense of self and my aesthetic. Being Swiss, Swiss people are really into design. And that's one of the things that having a design father, something that always kind of piqued my interest, was the Swiss Army knife poses a kind of a unique challenge. And this was my first flatware set. And this is actually my very first fork, which is a fork that it represents the crossover from making wearable stuff to functional. And it is on the line between wearable and functional. And so I started embarking on, this is just one of those veins that you saw in the spiral. This is the flatware vein. So I started experimenting with different materials. This is silver and concrete. Excuse me. And on the left is the work of David Tisdale. So what I would do is I'd find mentors at large, people whose work I thought was worthy of, influencing mine. And I became friends with this guy. He's an amazing designer, trained as a jeweler, was making just amazing flatware. And I said, that I've got to learn how to do this. So I created my own version, which was ebony and sterling silver. And this is in the Brooklyn Museum and the Museum of Art and Design. Some sketches. And so this is the next year. The next year I was looking at trusses. And so everything had a truss kind of oriented design. In this case, I made a truss flatware. Right to this day, we eat from the knockoff designs of this very design. This was when our building in Pawtucket was being demolished. I loved the girders and the I-beams based on, bulldozers and that kind of aesthetic. This was, Lynn actually has a fun part in this. When I made the models for these, Lynn said, "Oh, finally, you're making something worth making, a kitty litter scoop." So these are large serving pieces. I also want to just add in here, you have a very lovely member, Joe Chazen, who I met a couple of years ago, who has been really, really wonderfully generous about buying a whole bunch of these things and donating them to the RISD Museum. And I'm so grateful to have something represented locally in the RISD Museum. He's a wonderful guy, and he really has done wonderful things for the arts with his Networks project. Wonderful, lovely, lovely man. This is the beginning of another vein of work, which was the hybrid between, wearable art and performance art. This was just right around the time when I met Lynn, and I was pouring through her medical books. The piece on the lower bottom left is based on a centrifuge. And right around that time, her interest, of course, is she's an AIDS physician, so she's interested in AIDS. And I collaborated with an AIDS activist, and we created 3 different vials. One is blood, which is mine, and one is AZT, and one is semen, which happened to be Ben Cunningham's, which was the collaborator. And this is currently in the collection of the Racine Art Museum, which, if you can imagine what that would look like now, this is about 25 years ago. Disgusting. Anyway, this led to constrictor arm form and fixator based on head fixating devices that physicians use to position your head when you've had neck surgery or neurosurgery. And these are in the Museum of Fine Art Boston collection. And this is just to show you the series. This ended up, I think this was the last one. This is called Caress. It actually kind of looks like a medieval torture device, but I made this for a show in Germany, 1993, called Schmuckszene. So a lot of my work is process oriented. In this case, I found in a flea market, not a flea market, an auction, I found a hydraulic press, and I just started screwing around with it. And I love that you could have such amount of energy with just the press of a foot pedal, which is how this operates. And under 10 tons of pressure, you can make metal putty in your hands. And I explored a lot with this. This happens to be our New Year card from 2004. And it symbolizes it's kind of like the fireman's grip. It symbolizes the 4 members of our family. I thought it was my favorite card. It was the last card because I couldn't outdo that one. Forward. And then I made a series of brooches that were based on urban inspiration, the idea that in the city, I could be a pathfinder. I could explore tire tracks and realize what they came from. These almost reptilian forms were so interesting to me. Such interesting, diverse patterns that I tried to turn them into wearable art. And to me, it was also speaking to alchemy, the idea that you could take a piece of gold and through metaphor, turn it into mud by running a tire through it. So that's what I was exploring with here. I still have these. And then backing way back up again, this is another vein from that spiral. There was culturally, the Swiss love to drink a lot, embarrassingly enough. And when I was there at apprenticing, they had the family heirloom bottle cork in the middle of the table in a wine bottle. And I thought, you know, that's the perfect way to make sculpture, perfect time to enjoy it when you're having a glass of wine. And so I made an entire series of these things, got me on Vogue magazine, which was really exciting. I think I was probably 25 years old or something. And it also funded, because I couldn't make these fast enough. I was selling them left and right. I had a gallery in the Lower East Side in New York, and they were selling them faster than I could make them, taking back orders. And that is what funded my studio for years to come. A lot of these are cast found objects. A lot of it is fabricated sterling silver. I used some gold in it. And the furthest right one has a little ruby where the receptor is for the radar. And this is another vein. This is probably one of the ugliest things I ever made, but it was a spark of an idea. My parents traveled a lot. They took us traveling. This is in Haiti, 1984, when Jean-Claude Duvalier's son, Baby Doc, was in power. And we went there for 2 or 3 weeks and drove around the countryside. And that inspired me to start this series of vessel forms that are up on, you know, stilts, sort of. This whole time I was teaching myself how to do drafting, because I realized that if I ever wanted to do production, I had to learn the language of communication to other people. If other people are going to be making some components or entire pieces of mine, I needed to learn how to communicate that. Of course, now everything's computer driven. So each of these is probably 2 years apart. And I started playing around with different components. I realized that if I could develop one component, I could use it as a design element for other components, for other parts, designs. These pieces are in the Museum of Art and Design, a salt and pepper shaker. And this was, I actually entered a competition and didn't get in. It was a silver competition called, sponsored by Fortunoff Silver. And I didn't get in the first year because I didn't have enough of a portfolio. And I thought, you know, I don't need that competition to make this piece. I really believe in making this piece. So I made it out of brass and ebony. And it was a 3-year competition. The second year I entered this design, and I got in. They paid the silver and I got an award, and I sold the piece to some guy in Germany, and I ended up on the cover of a magazine. So it was a good lesson for me to be tenacious. And I learned that probably 15 years ago, and I'm still pretty tenacious. So this is special. This is, so Itai had his bar mitzvah a few years ago now, 7 years ago now. And so I thought, you know, I don't really have the right to make Judaica just because I'm married to Lynn. And then when Itai went through his bar mitzvah and Isla with her bat mitzvah, I thought, you know what, now I have license to do this. So I want to make a menorah, and I want to make one based on the miracle of the oil. So I made this ugly little thing, and I thought it would be interesting to show that a lot of these designs actually come from very humble beginnings. They're the spark of an idea. And if you think of it kind of like, I always liken it to children. You have your kids, you take photos, and then they go off in the world, and you still have the photo. You still have the spirit of the piece at home here with you, and it makes you smile. And this piece happens to be, this is the done piece. This piece happens to be in the Museum of the MFA Boston, and it's on display right now. It's actually called a man aura because the shamas is in a very manly place. So part of my kind of last stage was developing, it's fairly easy to wow people with gold and silver and precious things, but it's much more difficult to do that with something that's common. And I thought, that poses a beautiful challenge, and that's what I want to do. And coming from a Swiss family where our motto was use it up, wear it out, make it do without, we recycled everything. We never bought new things. We learned how to fix them. And that's how I grew up. And that's how I learned how things work. And to me, that was a far greater challenge. So I started screwing around with rubber band balls and plumbing fixtures and bottle corks and crushed cans. And then at one point when I was in Pittsburgh, I happened to, my family, instead of like other families, go take their kids to the zoo on the weekend, my family went to scrap yards. And it was like going to the library, only it was the library of possibilities of materials that you could use to make things. And I bumped into this guy, his name is Paul Warhola, and he was Andy Warhol's brother. And I thought, this is really kind of cool. I'm getting traffic signs. This is where I first found, traffic signs and started using this in my design vocabulary. It's so poetic that it was Andy Warhol's brother's scrapyard, when this work is so poppy. It is pop art in a craft sense. So now, of course, I have a bigger sign Jones, so I have to get tons and tons of signs every year, which this happens to be a load from Newport. I pay them a little extra and they dump it in my driveway. Then I have to sort them all. The traffic signs have stuck with me now for 20 years. And I'll tell you, it really speaks to everything that excites me. It's got color. It's got, you can extrapolate parts. It's cheap, so you can experiment with it a lot. I also love that it's not pretentious like silver or gold, and you don't have issues where you're subduing cultures, using cultures to get your gold and silver or diamonds. It's really about recycling. It's a political message, and that really appeals to me. And I also love that everybody kind of gets it. Children get it, designers get it, graphic people love it. And I really enjoy working with aluminum. This is the beginning of a piece that I made where the signs are turned inside out. This is actually in the V&A Museum in England. And these are wall pieces. So I started hammering these all by hand. And after waking up with my hand numb, I realized, I can't do this all my life, all this hammering. Needless to say, nobody I was near liked being near me because it was too loud. And I started doing these groupings on the wall, and it kind of goes back to visiting museums and castles in Switzerland where they would put heraldry up on the walls. This family has this coat of arms, this family has that coat of arms, and also kind of speaks to the armor that was around there. And that really appealed to me. Occasionally, some of the signs I couldn't use for things that I was doing, so I had to somehow use them. This happens to be the bathroom floor downstairs from my studio. And then I started developing lots of scrap from all this process, and I realized I better figure out how to use the scrap, because now that I've schlepped all this stuff to my studio and I paid for it, I don't want to get rid of it again. I want to see if there are parts that I can use. So I started developing a way based on diamond setting. I swaged these pinbacks into these really beautiful little pins that look kind of like that. And they have these little pinbacks. So it's pretty kind of clever, if I do say so myself. I think it's kind of clever. And I started experimenting with burning, which came with beautiful effects. I started making these really kind of stark traffic signs more natural, kind of more organic. These are actually in the Museum of Art and Design too. And of course, the best way to work is a series. You come out with a format and you explore within that format. What can I do with this? Can I pierce it? Can I melt it? Can I bend it? Can I shape it? Can I leaf it? So a big part of this is also making a living. So my dream, which I'm really fortunate to be able to sit here, my dream has always been to have a studio where I can make whatever I want and to have a team when I need it. If a project's too large, I have employees to help me out. One of the kind of more pivotal things that happened was I used to make these lamps and I made them all by hand, hammering, splicing, forming, fabricating, and lathe turning. And I happened to bump into a spinner in Pittsburgh. And this is Steve. He's still the same guy that spins my platters for me. And that is what the process looks like. It's a lathe that spins flat sheet against the form. He pushes it against the form to create a depth. And suddenly I had the ability to make large quantities, which brought the price down. And I love that they became so much more affordable to the common person. Instead of spending, $10,000 on a platter, now they can buy them for 500, 700, 900. It was really in the realm of affordable. Another thing, this is actually kind of a funny story where Lynn, when she was in med school, she was doing a gastrointestinal GI rotation, and she was doing a lecture on stool samples. And a friend of mine who owned a gallery in Pittsburgh, he launched an exhibition for chairs and invited me to it, and it was entitled Stool Samples. So I thought, I've never made a chair. I bet I can do that. And so I started this whole kind of investigation of making a chair, and this is what they look like now. And that is another one of the things that I am able to, sell. A big part of selling your work is actually to put the same kind of creativity that you put into your work into how you market it. You need to get your story out. You need to promote it, not in an obnoxious way, but in an informative way, so people kind of realize where you're coming from, and you need to make your work accessible. This is me trying to look very, very cool. This is actually a vest that my mom made out of recycled ties for me. One of my favorite vests. It's made out of silk ties. And this is the Jacob Javits Center, the New York Gift Show. Every year I would do 1 to 3 or 4 shows at various locations to find wholesale accounts to sell my work. So eventually I built up a nice network of galleries around the world that would sell my stuff. Of course, your work is only as good as the photographs. And this is my long-term photographer, Dean Powell, who helped me get tons of publicity all the way from Russia. By the way, that's our wedding rings on the right there. Lynn and I's rings fit in each other like gears. To Korea. So a funny story about my my brand is I call it Hue Manufacturing, and it really kind of sums up what I do. I noticed one day I was singing in my studio, little known fact, I had Mr. Rogers as my teacher in 4th grade. I lived next to the church that he was I think they call him a minister. Was he a minister? Something like that. He was some kind of a religious figure in the church right next door to where I lived. And he would come over to the Shady Lane Free School where I went in 4th grade. And he would come and hang out with us. And we knew him from TV. And he had this song called I'm a Man Who Manufactures. And I caught myself, it's kind of embarrassing. It's not cool hip hop or a rock song. I was singing a Mr. Rogers song in my studio. Maybe I shouldn't tell everybody that. But I was singing, I'm a man who manufactures. I'm a man who manufactures things and everything. I'm a man who and I thought, oh, I'm a man who manufactures. I'm a Hue Manufacturing. I'm a machine. So that became my registered trademark that I went under. And most of my work now has this trademark stamped into it. It's the perfect hybrid of man-made and manufacturing, which is kind of what I do here. It's limited multiples. And then it became set in stone when a guy came out with a rotatory printing, a book on metal techniques, and my phrase became a page in a book and it became real. As soon as it's printed, it's real, right? So I started making things for hospitals. This is the Cleveland Rainbow Babies Children Hospital and the Pennsylvania Turnpike Authority. I started working with interior designer. This is for a private commission for somebody's house in Annapolis. I started doing jobs for Comedy Central. I did a whole bunch of stuff in their lobby in Manhattan, and I made their holiday gifts one year. This was their holiday gifts that they sent out. I was the poor artist that they were supporting that year. I had to make 1,400 of these things. And it's funny because that's actually one of my flaws. I'm kind of cocky. I think I can do anything when it comes to metals. And these guys approached me at the New York Gift Show and they said, well, can you handle an order of 1,000? I said, 1,000, sure, of course, no problem. In a month? Sure. And it proved to be very challenging, but I'd never made 1,000 of anything. It was a good challenge. I learned a lot. I learned a lot about organization and about hiring people to help me out. One of my clients is a VW dealer in Capistrano, Southern California. This was the last time they ordered thousands and thousands of keychains. Of course, yesterday I just shipped off another 2,500 of these. Only I didn't have a team. I made them all by hand. That's their lobby. This is a Witch up in Somerville, Mass. I was doing a bunch of work for them. They used my work in a lot of their restaurants overseas. And this is JP Licks, also in Somerville. So kind of the last phase is to now what? To do something new, to figure something else out. And a big part of the problem with working with traffic signs is that they are becoming, the ones that I can use are becoming obsolete because they're called engineering grade finish, which is a flatter finish. It doesn't have as much dimension and it's easier to bend. And now they're starting to use prismatics, which are thicker and crackle when you bend them. So I had to think of a new way to come up with designs. So I started planning a way to mount these things to buildings. And I got the chance to make a piece in Gaithersburg, Maryland for a parking garage. This was my model. And these are the parts. And actually, I think I have some here, but it's not worth looking at. And that is the finished piece. And the idea is that these things have such a slight bend that it doesn't matter what the material is made out of, really. It can be prismatic or engineering grade. And I give them a slight bend and I suspend them on the wire, and the wind can blow them and they move in the air flow. And it makes it really vibrant and alive. It's exciting from a distance because it's so colorful and shimmery. And it's interesting up close because you can kind of start seeing the little details from the traffic signs. So in comes Michael Steinberg, who has been one of the most generous, wonderful people I've ever worked with. He is a real estate developer out in St. Louis who, through one of my keychains, found me and offered me jobs consistently for probably the last 6 years. His name goes on all these buildings, and his family comes from Omaha, Nebraska. And he's affiliated with the JCC in Denver, Colorado, St. Paul, Minnesota, St. Louis, Missouri, and Omaha, Nebraska, all of which now have my work in their gyms and their lobbies. And he approached me with the desire to do a piece on the facade of this huge JCC complex, which is one of the most amazing complexes I've ever seen. A full gym, workout, 2 pools, if not 3, you know, a wonderful entertainment area and a stage. And I think they house all the Jewish activity of that area, but this is the final piece. It is the largest piece I've ever made to date. I thought it was really successful. And the thing that made it really wonderful was that I could put it up with my son. My son drove with me to Omaha and he helped me install this whole thing in 110-degree weather. I'm really proud of that. So another thing I really learned from Lynn, and it really does speak to kind of the Jewish desire to be inclusive, to nurture, to share, to grow, tikkun olam. And that's one thing that I'm so grateful to be a part of this community. And one of those things that I've been involved with, even just before meeting Lynn, was getting guns off the street. And I was affiliated with the Pittsburgh Anti-Violence Coalition, and they did 2 or 3 buybacks every year right around the holidays, and they would get thousands of guns and they would ruin them. They would melt them in a large ingot. You know, Pittsburgh is a steel town. And they approached me and they said, look, we do these buybacks and they're a once-a-year event, but we need to create something where this is on people's minds consistently, because it's an issue that's not going away. And sadly, they were right. It's only gotten worse and worse and worse. This country's crazy with their weapons. So I put together an exhibition called Artists of a Different Caliber, and that toured the country for 2 years. This is now fast forward to maybe 2 years ago. I'm affiliated with the Rhode Island Coalition Against Gun Violence and the Moms Demand Action, who I think are just wonderful activists doing really good work, doing some serious fighting and very knowledgeable about how they're going about changing the laws that I personally think are way too lax. I use my studio for fundraisers like Planned Parenthood. In this case, it was the Rhode Island Coalition. This is Pare and the police chief. It's the commissioner and the police chief, and Jerry, the head of the Rhode Island Coalition. One of the pieces that I'm really proud of, it still stands. It's across from Superior Court, is the gun totem. I won a competition to fund it. This is now 2001 is when this was made. And it's still there, in case you go by there. It's only 12 feet tall, but at the time it was the largest thing I ever made. And it's studded with 1,000 guns, and it's kind of like a warning. The positioning is really wonderful because it is positioned across from Superior Court, which is an institution of law. And it's kind of a warning. It's a sort of like a gate. South Main Street, where that is sort of a gateway to the city. So it's my idea is that it's a warning, a cautionary thing. This is the loaded menorah, which I thought, you know, a menorah is a symbol of light and goodness. And the idea that it emanates from this Hieronymus Boschian twist of dangerous, black, dark, scary guns. It's an optimistic message that change can come, change can happen through light. So I started a new show, which is now done by 2 years. It happened about 4 years ago, called Imagine Peace Now, innovative merger of art and guns to inspire new expressions of peace now. So I put together, I think it was 100 pieces from 6 different countries, and I invited people to apply, and they had to send in their designs, and I would send them an actual ruined handgun, which had its own challenges to send through the mail, but they all sent their pieces back, and we had exhibitions all around the country. And I created a book, a Kickstarter campaign that raised $55,000 to start a book that is still circulating. And I was really proud because this was a good kind of a pivotal kind of an opportunity for each city that this went to, the Moms Demand Action would come and we would have symposia to address the issue of gun violence. And we'd invite the local politicians to come and debate this, and was, again, a constant reminder that this is an issue that needs to be addressed urgently. This happens to be in, that's Maura Healy, who's doing a wonderful job in Massachusetts. This was the show in Boston at the Society of Arts and Crafts. This was now 3 years ago, I think. But I also I love to teach, and I love teaching metals to people. In this case, I was invited to go to North Ireland. Selena Coyle invited me to do a residency for 3 weeks. That's the mayor of Derry, North Ireland. She was behind us 100%. And this was my crew that helped me build these. And these are the pieces that are still there on the river foil that the public gets to use, made out of Irish traffic signs. This was a project where I know we're getting close to, we have 15 minutes to look at the studio. We're getting towards the end, by the way. These are 100 pins that I wanted to create a community opportunity with, and I sold them to 100 people. And one of the requirements was that they had to send in their selfies. And I thought that was one of my favorite projects because it really is about the people. And I think that no matter what I do in my studio, it's always about the people. And speaking of which, these are my favorite people, Isla and Lynn and Itai. And I'm a lucky man. And I think that is just about, this is what my studio looks like, which it's gonna, when I move the camera, it's gonna be a little shaky, but this will be the static version that you can get a glimpse of. So I'm going to exit that. And so how are we doing? We all okay? Yeah.
You're great, Boris. This is terrific.
So thank you. I was going to now just show one or two things around the studio. Is this a good time to try that?
Are we all on that?
Yeah?
Judy, do we have
Okay.
any Judy, do we have many questions?
Well, yeah, we have.
Oh, 11. All right, Boris, we have 11 questions. Do you
Well-
want to do the two demonstrations first or answer the
There's
questions?
no questions. There's just comments.
That's comments.
Other
Okay.
Because if there were any questions, now would be just a fine time just to.
Yeah, there's no, it's all, well, somebody did ask if you ever reconnected with Mr. Rogers.
No, but
Parker asked.
But I did connect with my brother who said that he did an internship at WQED, which is channel 13 in Pittsburgh, which was the one that Mr. Rogers did his neighborhood on, and he was his intern. I didn't remember that. I didn't know that. So that's kind of cool.
There's a question. How comfortable are the metal chairs, Boris?
They are, well, let's put it this way. I just did 45 minutes sitting in. And it's my bum. You see, my bum is very comfy. And I'm not doing any work today.
Peter and I were in Provincetown a couple of weeks ago, and we were walking down the main street, and all of a sudden we look up at this gallery that we hadn't seen this year, and there Peter said, and I said, don't those things look like Boris's? And he walked in and he asked, are those Boris Bally chairs? So if you want to see them, you can certainly see them on the street of Provincetown in one of the galleries.
Yeah, and actually, just to mention it, if anybody's interested in acquiring anything, I sell through my studio. I'm just an email away. I have a website, which is my name, borisbally.com. And I also deal through artfulhome.com, who sells, they kind of keep me busy. So while I'm doing one thing, I get orders all the time through the internet and I drop ship. So just to put that
All right,
out.
tell them what's hanging behind you that we noticed yesterday, because I still think that's the coolest thing.
Which one is?
The things that are hanging, you know, from the,
Oh. Yeah, so all right, so we're gonna go mobile now. I'm taking this thing off. All right, this is new for me. So I'm gonna take my little camera. I have it on a tripod. And so those are the chairs. And wouldn't you know it, they balance. Let's see if I can find, where's my little rod? There's, they balance on from a pivotal point. So let's see if I can pull this off. You can kind of see that, right? Whoa, okay. Now we're gonna grab that. And let's see, so I can go ahead and did you guys see that? So I can actually, it pivots right from that point is the balance point, that seat, which is really kind of cool, isn't it? So it's a great way to store it. And let's see, so the chairs themselves, so I have a soldering area. That's where I do a lot of the silver work, which I don't do so much anymore. I was telling Arthur and Peter that part of the problem with working with aluminum is that it infects the silver. Little pieces of aluminum get into your silver and it contaminates it. So I've been doing less and less precious metals. I have a centrifuge. That's a centrifuge right here. Let's see if I can. And I cover all this. That's a centrifuge where I made our wedding rings, actually, in that centrifuge. And you melt the gold in the crucible there, and it spins around, and through centrifugal energy fills the mold. Don't do so much of that anymore either, but you never know. But the chairs, like the chair backs, they're all done with templates. And I put them on a sign, and I draw, I don't know if you can see I draw the lines, on here, and then I saw them out and I bend them so that they look like that. So that's a chair back ready to go. And through the dimensionality of it, through the bends, it creates strength. So that's kind of the cool part of the chairs, and that is what makes them comfortable, is that the design has a kind of an area of relief for your back because of the way it's bent. I'm actually going to show you how I do a bend. So this is a piece of scrap. Oops, here's a tripod. Get on there, little tripod. So this is a piece of scrap. What I do is I heat it. Let me get my torch fired up here with a settling torch. So I've got my torch, right? You can see that torch. And I heat it slightly with the torch, like that. And then I try to carry all this stuff over together. Tricky, very tricky. Whoa, now. Thanks for bearing with me, everybody. This is, it's hot.
Ouch.
Ouch. So that is my bending brake, which you can see right there. And can you see this? And I put this piece in here and down. That gives you a beautiful bend. And the heat is primarily used to allow the coating to follow it when you bend it, as opposed to crackling it. And then it becomes structurally rigid. And in case I need to measure, I have my tools to measure. And let's see, what else do we have here? We have, I thought it might be really interesting to show you what my studio looks like from up high. So we're gonna go up high. It's my favorite. This is actually Isla's favorite place to perch. And this is up on a stair that I turned into a speaking platform for when people do fundraisers. They can come up here and address the audience. And down there, you see my hammering table. That's where a lot of the smithing goes on. My work table, where it can become anything that I need it to become to assemble something. And my soldering area. And that's kind of like the dirty grinding area where I do the sanding and stuff like that. And you can see all my chairs are hanging up there. Okay, now I'm gonna make my way down. Try not to fall. Whoa.
Where's your jewelry bench?
My jewelry bench is right. Whoops, sorry guys. I'm sure you're all dizzy by now. But my jewelry bench is right here. So I have 2 sides to it. The fog, by the way, is my nickname because I'm always a little bit foggy. But that's where I do like remember the keychains that I was showing you? That's what I've been doing tons of. And so I have these things ready to file and I use a hand file. I wonder if I can show that too. Let's see. Maybe I can. Yeah. So
One of the, somebody has asked a question, how much, well, more than one person, how much are the chairs?
the chairs go for $1,100 for the transit chairs. And the Broadway chairs are $2,500, which are these things, which are like that thing. And okay, let's see, that one there. Those are $2,500. And it's funny because everybody kind of wants a specific sign. And so I have, yesterday, somebody wanted a detour. So I have to keep an eye out for a detour sign. But here's one of the pieces that I made. This is the first one of these is in the Museum of Art and Design. And if you look closely, it's all made out of triggers. This is 100 triggers from guns. So the idea behind that, let me set this down so you don't get dizzy. The idea behind it is that it's modeled after the Native American bear claw necklaces. And the concept of that, the background of that is that if something that frightens you like a bear, you break off a little piece of it and you wear it around you as an amulet to protect you from it. And I thought that's the perfect kind of metaphor for gun violence.
Yes.
And so I've dismembered 100 guns and torn out their claws from the guns. So that's the idea behind that. And then of course we have that, there's that loaded menorah. Yeah, and I think it was Arthur that asked me about the materials. What I try to do is also sort of like the Native American idea that you use every part of the bison, you don't throw anything out. So a lot of the things that I make in my studio, I use the leftover parts to make some other new design. And that's how I ended up with coasters and keychains and stuff like that. Let's see, what else do we have here?
Another question, Boris, was,
Sure.
are you still making or would you make to order wedding bands?
I have on occasion. Right now, there's a guy in California who wants me to make a platinum wedding band, but I prefer gold. I do gold and silver. Yes, sure.
All right.
I'm gonna turn on my light here. All right. So this is actually my office, which is kind of fun because it's the stage and I can look down on the studio from it, which is kind of a cool view. It's and my collection room. This is where I keep all the things that are going out in between shows or going out for orders. Another model from the Broadway chair. You can kind of see the Broadway chair model is a ugly little paper model and different jewelry. I made that piece right there. I wonder if that'll focus. That was right when I met Lynn. That's a template. When I met Lynn, the drug companies would constantly give her templates with their logos. Whoa, their logos on it. And she's such a purist that she didn't want to wear she didn't want the logos, you know, to promote the drug companies. So I made her generic ones that she could wear and use that didn't have, you know, drug companies, just the artistic ones. But that's kind of, what else can I show you here? Different pins and models. I collect other people's jewelry, my favorite jewelry friends, you know, we often trade for different things. There's a gorgeous bracelet. This is an arm form by Shang-Xin Ye, who is a civic engineer turned jeweler. Isn't that amazing? And it's all one piece. Each piece is an element, is one unit that the math had to perfectly, you know, interlock to become the bracelet.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. And
But you know, I'm amazed. We talked about an hour and you filled it, and I think everybody's probably still sitting on the edge of their seats, Boris. On behalf of the temple, on behalf of Beth Elders, we can't thank you enough. And if everybody could turn off their silence, and everybody gives him a big round of applause.
you guys,
And it seems, we were so concerned, but it seemed so effortless. It was really, really a wonderful, wonderful presentation. And we thank you so much.
thank you very much for having me. I'm so honored. It was fun.
It was
Nice to
wonderful.
meet you both too.
Thank you very much. And maybe you'll come to our next Beth Elders thing, because you said you're 60 now and you can tune in with us.
As long as you don't tell anybody I'm 60.
I would, it'll never pass my lips again. Absolutely.
There's about 20 some people that know now, sorry.
Yeah. There's only 20. And nobody will talk to anybody else, right?
Boris, you're
Hey.
25 at heart. Come
It's on
on.
Facebook too, by the way.
I do want to add one thing that Boris neglected to say. Boris, Lynn, and the children are members of Bethel.
Yeah, he did. He said it.
Proud
So he
members.
said
I
it.
think-
Oh, you did? I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I missed it.
and I will say one of the things, not only is Bethel has always been a place warm in my heart, close to my heart, but they also have a wonderful silver collection. And whenever I, pick up my kids, at school, I would always kind of stall there and look at each piece. And it's so wonderful. I think art would be nowhere without the Jews. There's such a deep understanding and appreciation for art. And I'm so grateful to be a part of that. So.
And we're very lucky to have you as part of it. Thank you again. It's just.
Thank you all.
Beautiful.
All right.
Thank you.
Enjoy the
It was
sun.
great.
The sun's here, right?
Thanks,
Yeah.
Boris.
All right.
you,
Thank
Boris.
All right.
you.
Bye.
Boris.
Boris, is Lynn still on? I don't know.
Lynn is there.
Yeah.
Where's
Lynn?
Lynn?
Yeah,